Hello, and welcome to Eco Show. This is episode 21. I'm Henry, and this is a show about the environment, ecology, happenings in that space, and sometimes things that are unrelated to that, but usually pretty on topic with ecology and the environment. I go through usually a plant or an animal of the week to start, and then I talk about some research, and then I'll talk about some news from the past week in the environment and ecology and things like that. Okay, so that's the show. Let's jump into the plant of the week. The plant of the week this week is a plant, and it's a conifer, which means that it's a tree that has a cone, and the subfamily is called Sequoioideae. Sequoioideae. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce it, but that's how it looks in words. And in this genetic subfamily, there are three main trees in it. The one that we're going to be talking about today is called Metasequoia glyptostroboides. I'm not going to get it. And its common name is called the dawn redwood. So I'm just going to be calling it that. But this subfamily is the redwoods. So there's three redwoods around the world. There's the one we're going to be talking about today, the dawn redwood, which is from China. There's Giganteum, which is in coastal California and Oregon. And there's Sempervirens, which is in the Sierra Nevada, which is a mountain range between California and Nevada. So yeah, the dawn redwood is our tree for today, and we have some photos here showing its shape. Overall is a sort of cone shape. It's got these little cone seed pods that are cute and round, and some lovely leaves here today. So we're going to be talking about this plant a little bit, but mostly about the story of how it was discovered or rediscovered, because that was an interesting thing that I ran across while I was reading about this. So it has these long, bright, fresh leaves that we saw in this photo. These 2 centimeter cones, so pretty small cones, not like those giant pine cones that you might usually think of. And it's fairly fast growing. It can be 35 meters or 115 feet by the age of 50, which is a lot taller than I expect to be by the time I'm 50, but I still have my hopes. And there's a cute armpit under each branch. So I'll put a photo up of the armpit under the branch. And the largest recorded dawn redwood was 50 meters tall, or 160 feet, and 2.2 meters wide, or 7.2 feet wide at the base. Also, in its native range where it's from in China, there have been up to 8-meter wide bases found in sort of a prehistoric setting that we'll talk about in a little bit. But those aren't very common in their common range now. So dawn redwood, common in China, and we're going to talk about how it was discovered now. It was first described, the dawn redwood, in 1941 from a fossil record. Dr. Shigeru Miki from Kyoto University, he found a divergent leaf form. So he was looking through fossils, and he saw this one that looked different from other redwoods. And I have some photos here of Dr. Miki looking very serious, looking over his books. And and he planted some of these trees at his house, which is cute. So he found this and some cute recollections on Dr. Miki from his past students is that when it would rain heavily, he would go and he would get on the train and he would ride on the train until he saw an exposed cliff face that would be exposed by the rain. So the rain would break down the edges of a hill or something like that. And he would take the train and he would just go as soon as it would start to rain. He would leave a note for his wife saying whether he was going to the west or the east. And when he found these eroded cliffs, he would go and he would take all the plant fossils he could, because there would be plant fossils coming off the side of this exposed cliff. And after he would go there, other paleobotanists would recollect that there would be no fossils left, and they would have to wait until the next heavy rain to go and find some. Also, there were no fingerprints on Dr. Miki's fingers because he had ground plant fossils on whetstones without gloves to make prepared slides. So this was a person who was really committed to what they're doing and really loved what they're doing. I thought those were some cute little anecdotes about him. And he would instruct his students to observe plants by using the 5 senses: sight, sense of touch, olfaction or smelling, taste, and hearing. So when you're out in nature the next time, give some of those 5 senses a try. Okay, here I have a photo of the dawn redwood, and this is it actually is deciduous, so it has this beautiful coloration when the leaves fall. And so Dr. Miki found these fossils, but it was thought to be extinct. But it was discovered in China by a person named John Wang. Not John, like Zhan Wang. And he was a successful professor who learned plant IDs from a young age for Chinese medicine. And as he was going on a research trip, he got malaria. And while he was recovering, an old student of his asked him to identify a tree for him. And it happened to be this dawn redwood, which was thought to be extinct or non-existent. So he found this trees, and following the connections that were made of the discovery of this tree, there were expeditions sent for seed, and this dawn redwood has been distributed around the world and is popular in many arboretums ever since. That's not the end of the conservation story, though, because it was distributed around the world, and it is around the world, and it's kind of this sad situation where it's spread around the world now, but in its actual native range, it's very uncommon. And in the remaining areas, the landscape where it is surrounded by rice paddies. And like I talked about at the start, where there are these prehistoric samples of the trunks that were 8 meters wide that were found, and those were found in some of those rice paddies. So there would have been a huge number of these trees that would have been chopped down in order to grow rice. And I got snot coming out my nose. A bit congested this morning. So in its native area, it's very uncommon. It's very uncommon, and not only is it very uncommon, but because it's so popular around the world, people collect all of the seeds from the base of these, so there's usually few, if any, seeds to actually regenerate. So the area where dawn redwoods are remaining, the trees are very old, they're not very healthy, and there isn't a lot of connection in through the age group, so there's not a lot of young ones there. That is pretty much that, and we have just a little adorable photo of Jiangwang in a birch forest here, and we have some more recollections on Jiangwang, and his students remembered that he emphasized hands-on experiences in observing looks and behavior of plant species, and he would make nicknames for different species to help people remember them. Like he would say some are mountain climbers, which means they're cool temperature resistance, or if they were greedy boys, they would be nutrient loving. Thirsty guys were water demanding plants, and desert fighters were drought adapters. He would tell stories about the species, and he would also say looking, touching, smelling, and chewing were frequent practices that should be practiced out and about. So I didn't have that in any of my classes, and there's probably some health and safety concerns with chewing things, but I think that ought to be brought back. So that's the dawn redwood. That's our plant for the week. Hope you enjoyed. We have 2 other redwoods to cover at some other time. They're both really cool. I wanted to do giant sequoias, but then I found this dawn redwood and I hadn't heard about it before, so gotta do that. And I think yeah, that's all we're gonna say about that. Okay, on to our research. And today we have a research article titled Invasive Spartina alterniflora Marshes in China, a blue carbon sink at the expense of other ecosystem services. This is by Shangzhen Qi and Gail Chimura. I have a photo here of Spartina grass, Spartina alterniflora, which I'm just going to call Spartina because it's a little bit easier. And we have a photo of this grass overlooking some water. It looks very kind of relaxed, not too much of an issue, but the key points from this article are that carbon credits can sometimes lead to undesirable situations, and that's what's come about with Spartina alterniflora. It was introduced back in the 70s and 80s to China in order to stabilize land and extend areas of land. So it's really good at holding soil, and it's been put in different places, and it's been distributed in different places so you could get more stable land in areas. But it was then recognized as being invasive. And what they're doing in this study is looking at the impact of Spartina in carbon on carbon sequestration versus native grasses, because with carbon credit system there's an emphasis to do new planting in order to sequester carbon, and so in some cases Spartina has been used because it can hold a lot of carbon, and it's been promoted for that. The issue with this grass is, although where it increases carbon, it reduces biodiversity, it threatens fisheries, and it threatens tourism. So you're getting carbon sequestration at the expense of basically destroyed ecosystems. And what they found was that compared to native grasses, there's actually more methane released from Spartina grass. And as usual, they call for more research to explore the benefits of native vegetation. And so that's pretty much the main bits about the article, but this is a issue that's happening in multiple places where there's a push to sequester carbon, but oftentimes the plants that are chosen in order to do that are ones that are going to have not good impacts on the ecosystem, because you're having to basically monocrop something that you're saying, okay, this thing sequesters carbon really well, so let's plant a huge amount of it so that we can sequester carbon. And a lot of times that's just not really how different places work very well. And it also emphasizes doing new planting, so you aren't necessarily recognized for having existing forests and things like that. So the carbon credit system is very tricky. I usually don't understand it, and I don't today any better than any other time, but this is just highlighting a particular issue from using this one, Spartina alterniflora. So a quick research article today, and let's get to the news. So our first news piece is that the Gateway Arch, which is a big metal spectacle in St. Louis, Missouri, is going to be turned off in September for the month of, or was it actually, I think, no, it's for the month of May. And this is because it will help bird species who are trying to migrate. And May is a big migration time for approximately 325 bird species. So by doing that, that will hopefully lead to more birds having more safe travel. And I was looking into this, and apparently, according to the Smithsonian Museum, approximately 300 million to 1 billion birds die from hitting buildings each year. And particularly, that issue happens at night. And it's unclear why this is happening, but birds use stars for guidance as their guidance system, and light pollution can be so bad sometimes that you can't see stars. So it might be that they're so confused that the only thing to really guide them to go towards are cities. But it is unclear. People aren't too sure what the reason in particular. And so this should be a citywide effort that should be done to turn off the lights at night. And you always see this I think it's getting better in some places, but some places you just see rows and rows and rows of lights being on. And how lovely would it be if we could see the whole night sky wherever it is that we're living. It's good to have lights for safety for people, but those can be done in a way where they could be motion sensor or something like that, where they turn on if you're around them. It would be great if cities you could see the stars in every city at night. That would be a cool goal for our lifetime, actually, is to be able to see the night sky in every city at night, because the majority of buildings aren't having people in them anyways. And I'm sure you could design streetlights to not go back up into the sky as much. And what you can do personally is you can check migration maps for your area to understand when birds are coming through your area of living. And during that time, be sure to keep your bat signal off. If it's migration time, keep your bat signal off because that will definitely distract birds and possibly some bats. Our article number 2 today is that there are findings about butterflies. Oh my gosh, I hope I started recording. Did I press the record button? Yes, I did. I did press the record button. That would have been awful. No, it wouldn't have been. It would not have been awful. It would have been a thing. And we would have gotten through it. Okay, so there are findings about butterflies. And the findings are that they originated in America 100 million years ago. And to give some context about what the Earth looked like at that time, there was a giant sea through the middle of North America. At that time, North and South America were not joined, and Antarctica and Australia were still connected. So the world looked weird. And they originated 100 million years ago due to moths that decided they wanted to live during the day because there were nectar flowers about that had co-evolved with bees. Moths were thinking that they wanted to get a piece of that pie. So that's what researchers are thinking. And another interesting thing about this time period is that the dinosaur extinction happened 66 million years ago. And all butterfly families existed by the time of the dinosaur extinction. So pretty wild to think that the dinosaurs could not survive the Cretaceous Paleogene event, the big asteroid strike, but butterflies survived. So that can be a good little trick question. Who would survive? Who would win in a fight? Butterflies or dinosaurs? And you just don't specify that the fight is against an asteroid. And guess what? Butterflies win. Deal with it. The ancestral hosts of butterflies were bean plants. And in order to do this is a really huge worldwide project to find where the origins of butterflies were from. And they looked at nearly 2,300 butterfly species sampled from 90 countries and 28 specimen collections to reconstruct a new phylogenomic tree of butterflies, which represents 92% of all genera. And here's the image of what they compiled, which is really remarkable. And you can see all of these little connections being built between the different individuals. I think these are genera, so I think these are not the species. Different species around the edge. But you can see all of these little step ladder things, and those all connect, and you can see it all connects into that one common ancestor. Very cool, big project, collaborative science is awesome to see. There was a wild horse act passed in Colorado, and it expands protections for Mustangs. This comes after 145 horses died from flu outbreak in a holding facility last year. This act will bring more staffing and resources for fertility control. So wild horses aren't a aren't a they were introduced by the Spanish, which makes this an interesting thing. They're definitely culturally important for many reasons, but their populations get really out of control because they don't have a sort of natural predator situation. I'll have to look up if a similar thing happens with zebras in Africa, but you don't hear about zebras causing as many issues. This is a bipartisan thing, which is cool to see. Glad we can agree on horses, but it does seem like one that would be a bit conflicting. But from looking at the way people voted on this, it was close to unanimous, and it will fund more care for them and more resources to do this fertility control in a way that is more humane, because it sounds like it's been being done in a way that is not so great. And I think that looks like it's everything for this week. So I think it's a bit of a shorter episode this week, but that is that. I hope you all are having a good week, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.